Hello, namaste, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I hope you enjoy the film. It is a very beautiful film. So, before we continue with we start our conversation, let me quickly introduce you to CoSAFF. CoSAFF, a coalition of South Asian film festivals, is coming together of seven South Asian film festivals in North America in response to COVID-19 and for the benefit of films and filmmakers. The seven film festivals are Tasveer South Asian Film Festival in Seattle, Chicago South Asian Film Festival, DC South Asian Film Festival, Mosaic International South Asian Film Festival in Mississauga, South Asian Film Festival of Montreal, Vancouver International South Asian Film Festival, and Nepal America International Film Festival. We are towards the end of day 4 of the festival now, and you just watched Gamak Ghar, and we'll be talking to the maker of Gamak Ghar, Achal Mishra. And my name is Yuvakar. I'm the festival director of Nepal America International Film Festival. Achal Mishra is a 23-year-old self-taught filmmaker and photographer from Darbhanga, a small town in North Indian state of Bihar. He started making films during his school days and went on to study film studies at King's College in London. After a brief stint in London, which was mostly spent in watching and observing cinema, he came back to India and has been making short films since then. Gamak Ghar is his first feature film. So I'll be talking to Achal, I'll be asking him some questions, Achal, sorry, and then I'll be asking him some questions. My friends at CoSAFF also helped me with questions. And then if you have any questions for Achal, I'll try to incorporate as many of them as possible. You can go to slido.com and use the event code #21608, which is also there in the description below the video. And I'll try to incorporate these questions. So, Achal, first, just talk about this gamcha. I'm showing this off to go with the theme of the story. This is for people who don't know. This is gamcha. This is popular among the people in the region of where the story is based. So when I first watched Gamak Ghar, at first I thought it was slow. It was going slow. It was not moving. The story hasn't started. But then I realized after a while that it is like the story has started. It is going on, and because the story is about a house, and the house doesn't move, it feels like the story is not moving. And I realized, coincidentally, your name is also Achal, which means unmoving, not moving, right? So, and my question is, I think you're young, 23, but the story that you're telling is very mature. The storytelling is very mature. So, when and how did you mature as a filmmaker?
I think it was the making of the film itself. I mean, I learned a lot. In a way, the film was my film school because I never went to a film school. So it was really working with the team I had and adapting to the whole process. Because how we started the film is not how we went ahead and ended the film. In a way that we were working with a lot of non-actors, and in the beginning I had this whole script written and all the dialogues written, and we started and I realized there's a gap, and that was because I was not very familiar with that sort of a village life, because I had been sort of an outsider there because I had grown outside of Bihar, and so that's when I realized, giving these dialogues written by me to these, actors it felt like an imposition. I'm telling them to speak lines which are not really theirs, So I started relying on them and giving them the space to create their own dialogues, to do the scenes. as they would like to do it. And I think that's where the film really came out. Uh,
So
because
let's go back a little bit then. Now that we started talking about this, I did read somewhere about your decision to make this film, but for the benefit of the audience here, why don't you go back a little bit and like tell us, why did you decide to make a film on this? And as also like as the house, not in the background but at the forefront of it.
Mhm. So this goes back to, I think, December 2017. I was planning something else entirely. It was a short film set in Delhi. And so December, and then just before, like 2 months earlier, I had visited the house during the Chhat Puja. And that's when I started realizing how the complete landscape of the village was changing. There used to be this empty space behind our house, and suddenly there were like 4 houses coming up there. And I realized ours is like the only house uh, which has been sort of left untouched, which is as it is, as it was, say 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier. All the other houses were either turned into duplexes, or they were in ruins, and just beside them a new modern double-story building had come up. Uh, so, and I had been photographing that space for some time, and uh, I was just uh, getting more and more interested in that place, and I wanted to make a film there at some point in the future. I hadn't decided what it would be or when it would be, but I knew I'm gonna make a film here at some point. But in December, in our family, my mother started talking of having plans to renovate the house, to bring down the main porch area and make a double story there. That's when I sort of, I realized I need to do something here now, and I almost saw it as I'll be preserving the house, in the film before it is, changed like all the other houses. So it started in that way, just as, and I was also aware of, how most of these cultural things were also being lost with time. The language, the way the ceremonies happened, the feast, the folk songs, and everything. So I wanted the film at the same time to be a cultural document as well. Getting all those things in the film to make like time capsule of sorts. So yeah, that's where it started.
Yeah. So you mentioned the cultural aspect of it. For the audience, I'll tell you, like the whole Mithila region, expands from India and also comes to Nepal, Janakpur area, and all that. So I am familiar with Mithila culture and Mithila Maithili language, and it's not very. I can't understand completely, but I have worked in the region, and I am familiar with it, and I see the similar kind of style of houses and people and all that in southern part of Nepal as well. So that's why it's very interesting to me also. So it is your story, right? Your own story, your own house. But how much of the incidents in the films are influenced by true incidents? Like, did you really spend summers there like that, all the families?
Yeah, say the part, the 1998 bit is, it's completely drawn from memories. Most of it is my own memories, and some are like things I heard from my cousins, or my family members. So the first part, it was written like it came completely from memory, and then once I had the characters, on paper, then I started fictionalizing their journeys through the film. Where they end up after 12 years, and then finally in the last part after almost 20 years. So I would say the foundation is very personal, where the characters are coming from, like how the grandmother is based on my own grandmother, and one of the characters who's coming from Patna is sort of based on my own father. There's a character in the second part who's clicking pictures. He's sort of based on me. But once they were in place, then I started, fictionalizing and, making their own trajectories. Yeah.
So I want to touch upon the cultural aspect of it, but maybe we can come back to that later on. Um, for me, like, okay, so first, I mean, you're telling the story from the perspective of the house, right? The way that the house sees is the way that the house feels it, but in physical reality, the house doesn't see, the house doesn't feel. So you'll have to rely. I'm thinking like you'll have to rely on someone else's feelings, someone else's. Is that mostly your feeling, or is that you've also incorporated the feelings and emotions of your family, larger family member, or also including the society? Like, what did you rely on most to tell that story?
The decision to go with the this perspective of the house was it was a formal choice of and it was almost, it felt very experimental in that way, and we were not very confident if it's going to work. uh, but I think very recently I'd seen this film called this American film called A Ghost Story.
Mm-hmm.
and it is about this this ghost and the ghost living through time. So that sort of gave me some amount of confidence to go ahead with that. And in the very initial days of writing the film, I was also toying with the idea of maybe say let's go with the perspective of this child, or let's go with the perspective of this character maybe, or let's have like multiple narratives of we are seeing the story through different perspectives. But I couldn't really settle for either of one of them. And uh, because my the first instinct to make the film was the house itself, the physical space itself. I think that's why I went with the with the perspective of the house. And then I believe as a director, however objective you try to be in a film, it's always going to be subjective. The very choice of putting a film, putting a scene there, or putting a camera in a certain place brings my own subjectivity. Say my cousin were making the same film in the same house, it would still be different. So I think that subjectivity definitely comes from uh, me as a filmmaker. Yeah.
So, I remember when, I revisit a place that I used to play when I was a child, when I was 4 or 5 or 6. I go to that place where I used to run around or play, bicycles, and I go to that place after when I'm 30 or 25. It feels like, was this place so small? It used. I remember being that place being such a huge space where I could, run around and hide. And now this place looks so small. So when you revisit something from your past, from your childhood, things can be different now. No, I mean, so you in telling your own story in that house, did you come across any such realization? Oh, is that how it was? Like I thought it was like this. Like, was there moments like that as you were writing the story or doing your research and talking to people? And was there any incident where you came to realize, oh, was it like this?
Uh, I don't know. Probably in some different aspects, But I mean, what you say is really true, and that is something we tried to incorporate in a way, again in the film form, by choosing to do with 3 aspect ratios. We
Yeah.
wanted to explore that space, in how it looks in different aspect ratios. Uh, but I mean. Mm, in a way, probably there's this thing where I was relying a lot on memory, and I was still trying to stay away from the actual reality of that time, because I wanted to treat it as memory. So let's say the first part, it's 1998.
Yeah.
And it's Bihar. So, there's not going to be that much electricity or that much voltage for the lights to be, lit up all the times. But since I was treating it as a memory, I didn't want to have those, low voltage or, very, I wanted it to be all well lit and, how it is in memory in that way. Also with the production design, I feel what we tried to do is we got more real in terms of the production design as we go ahead in the film. The first part is very, very neat and clean and organized in that manner. There are no lots of random elements just here and there, and it's very organized in that sense. So we were almost treating it as like photographic memory,
Yeah.
And photographic memory acts in a way that it ends up replacing the actual event. So now that you look back on those, you think of those days, you mostly remember them through those pictures. So that was something we were trying to do. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So now, since you started talking about the technical aspect, but like before we go into the technical aspect, I just wanted to ask you this: even if it's a perspective from a house, like we humans can relate to it. I mean, even if your story from this small town, a small village in Bihar, we can relate to it. Everyone can relate to it. So, do you think all these technical decisions that you took, like making it bright, treating it like a memory, do you think all of these things also, these technical decisions also helped in making it relatable to people?
Yes, I think definitely. I mean, I think going with a particular perspective might have made it more particular in that way of an experience. But uh, going by this sort of going with these formal choices, I think it gives the audience more space to go into their own sort of this reverie, or they start thinking about their own houses, because the pacing is as such, and so yeah, I mean, all of this was really aimed at that itself. And
So,
we were very doubtful as well if it's going to work or not, and that went on till very late. I mean, we had finished the film and we still didn't know if I mean, having no narrative arc as such is going to work for us or not. So
yeah. So did you shoot this in 60 mm?
no, unfortunately not. We really wish to, but I mean, the budget doesn't allow.
Okay. So it's all digital?
Yeah, all digital. We shot it on a C200 Canon.
Okay. So you started talking about the aspect ratio. Can you talk a little bit more about it, the aspect ratio and the color tone, the difference in the color tones and things like that? Can you talk a little bit more about it? Also, was it a pre-planned thing or something that you thought of while in the editing thing?
So aspect ratio was one of the first things that came, when I was planning the whole film, because I was seeing the film in like 3 different parts. So I thought, because it's set in 3 different time periods, let's go with 3 different aspect ratios. And then slowly as we inched towards the shoot, I started having doubts, and those doubts were there because I knew this had been done before, and I don't want it to be, I don't want it to repeat those same things. A lot of big films have done this, like, I mean, say Wes Anderson has done it in the Grand Budapest Hotel, where he jumps through aspect ratios whenever the time period changes, or more prominently and more significantly in this Chinese film called Mountains May Depart. Again, set in 3 different time periods, and it moves through different aspect ratios. So I was slightly, skeptical if we should do this or not, and we kept having this discussion, with our DOP Anand Bansal, and if it would have been just one aspect ratio, I would have probably shot the whole film in 4:3. Because that's the one I love the most. But what really excited us then was because Mountains May Depart has done it, but it is still, it's set in Australia, it's set in China, and lots of different spaces. For us, it was exploring just one space, through different aspect ratios. So what does a aspect ratio do to an image? in that manner. How do you perceive the space in three different aspect ratios? And we realize it really changes, because the first part, it's like, you're not seeing everything. You're just shown this, this very limited boxy view, and then you get to the last part and you get to see the whole, the empty house. Apart from that, it also had to do with the narrative in a way, because the first part is, I mean, it's all joyful and people are there, lots of people are there, and lots of talk happening, and there's a lot of joy, and so having that 4:3 didn't allow us to have a lot of empty spaces as such. Every time there are people, the frame is always filled. Move to the next 16:9, you will very naturally have those, you will start having those negative spaces around people, however close you shoot or whatever you shoot. And then finally in the last part, there's nothing, and you just see the whole breadth of the house. Apart from that, there's another thing which sort of I realized only when the film premiered for the first time here at Mumbai Film Festival. And that was, and that happened because I was watching the film for the first time on such a big screen, because while you were editing, on your system, and then the color grading happens, and then you see it, probably on a big projector, but it's not as big as, say a PVR.
Yeah.
So and the PVR, those screens are already in CinemaScope, So the film started like this, and then it just started expanding, And when I got to the last part, I realized, how the first part now feels like, almost like a memory, that you were not seeing the entire picture. You were only looking at, how you remember it now, how the photographic, that way. And now going ahead, you've almost caught up with the reality, the present time. So that's how it worked for me then, watching it for the first time. Apart from that, colors, it was done both in post-production, in color grading, as well as, during the production, I mean, in production design. So in the first part, we decided to go with a lot of, yellows and all the bright colors, the reds, orange, green, because there's mangoes, there's, this greenery, and it's summer, so there's blue skies, everything.
Summer in Mithila.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the second part, we thought we'll do a lot of blues, and we'll dull those colors a lot, So I think the only red you see in the second part is that the grandfather's diaries. They're wrapped in a red cloth, so that's probably the only red one sees in the second part. And there's a lot of blues. The kurtas are different tones of blues. And then for the final part, we decided to go completely, just like grays and whites and blacks.
Yeah. That gives a sense of emptiness and sense of loneliness.
And it goes with the seasons as well, because the first part is summer and the last is the winter. So sorry.
And as we were talking before, the winter in that part of that part of India and neighboring Nepal is pretty harsh.
Yeah.
So you've also used a long static frames, and at the same time have that controlled direction.
Sorry.
Being a first-time filmmaker, that too, it's like, how do you do it? How do you approach it?
I mean, like I said before, it was completely about the space, So, and I believe film is, more than a visual medium. It's so much more a temporal medium, which is a time-based medium. So I wanted to translate, that time one feels while there in that village, in that space, in the film as well, I didn't want to do a lot of rush cuts or, just cutting between faces. So when you do that wide shot and let the time play on its own, the space also seeps in, when the audience is watching, because, I mean, there are three people sitting there and they're talking and the shot keeps on going on. So the audience won't just look at the faces all the time. I mean, it's very natural that their attention will also go to say the wall behind or the window at the back or the flaking of wall. So those are things which a long shot or a wide shot does. So I wanted all of that to be there, and then we did a lot of blocking of how the characters will be placed, and it took a lot of retakes because all of them are non-professional actors doing it for the first time.
So how did you like, how did the selection of the cast go about? Like so many characters, and like
Very mixed process. There are a couple of theater actors, there are a couple of radio artists, and say the 50% of them are people I've known or people I've just discovered. So initially I was putting out these casting calls on the internet, and trying to look for naturally speaking actors. I got a few, but I mean, obviously our reach wasn't that great, so it was very limited. Then I went.
But Metal Theatre is pretty good, pretty active, right?
Yeah. So I went to the theater division in Darbhanga, and I looked for actors there, and thankfully I got a few from there. Uh, Apart from that, I mean, I wasn't really in looking for these non-actors. I wasn't trying to look for good actors to perform something. These are people who I've known for like say 5 years or 10 years, and I wanted them to perform themselves in the film.
Yeah.
It's not like you're giving them something completely different. They were just playing themselves in the film. But the challenge was the whole setup. There's a camera, there's 3-4 different mics, and there's all those lights. So they get very conscious in the beginning, and you can't really then do a very how you planned the shoot of doing 10 shots a day or things like that, because you have to completely understand them, how they are, and all of them are different. They are not professionally trained actors that they will come and so you need to give them the time and the space, and you need to adjust to their sort of behavior. And so that is something which I started realizing. So the first part was a lot of dialogues were cut out because they were not really working for me, how they were spoken. So initially, I think first 3 days I was very disappointed in a way of how the film is turning out to be, because this is not what I thought. And then after that, I kept the script away, and I told them, "Acha, this is the scene. This is what you need to talk about." And then I told them, "Speak it in your own way." And this was just the first schedule. And by the third schedule, they were so comfortable that they were suggesting me dialogues, and they were coming up with new things to add to the scene. And there's one scene in the second part where there are 3 people and they're sitting and talking. It's like one shot complete, and it's I think 5 minutes, 6 minutes long. That scene was added during the shoot itself. It was not scripted before, and so we got to the day when we have to shoot that scene, and we still don't have it on paper, anything, nothing. I just know these 3 will be sitting here and talking. So, and I had to do another scene, and then we had to shoot that scene. So I went to them, those 3 non-actors, and I told them, this is what I need. So let's start the conversation here, then take it towards this, and then let's end it at this. And I started shooting another scene which I was doing, and they were preparing amongst themselves. They were improvising and trying out new things. And by the time I was done, they were completely ready, and we did it. And they were so wonderful that I was surprised. The things they were bringing up.
So I think being a writer and director yourself would also help with those kind of situations, does it?
Yeah, I mean, being a writer, director, and editor as well, because since I'm an editor, I was also thinking of if this is not working out, how can I I'm also thinking of the edit. Say this scene is fine, but I didn't like the first dialogue. So I'm thinking, I can start the scene later, maybe. So all of those things were there. Yeah.
So was it also difficult? Like I mean, that's 4 different roles there: writer, director, editor, and producer. Was there ever a conflict between those 4 different roles?
No, there wasn't really a conflict. I mean, but I just realized I'm not a very good producer. Because there was a lot of mismanagement in the beginning, uh, and all that. But rest, I mean, everything was pretty smooth because all of those things are, I'm a writer first, and then when I'm directing, I'm director, and then I'm the editor. So, but yeah, I'm all those three times I'm also the producer as well. So yeah, that's the
Yeah,
concept.
I would say, like, writer, director, and editor perhaps comes naturally just together. Producer is slightly different kind of role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, before we move on to the questions from the audience, we have plenty here. We'll try to see how many we can fit in. Um, so, in the beginning, you talked about, you also did this sort of to lot is being lost in the culture of that region. Actually, that might be the case in many places in the world, but yeah, there too, it's true. And so, how much of that objective of yours have you been able to achieve with this film, like in a preserving culture aspect of it?
Sorry, can you?
Like, how much were you successful in contributing towards? Do you think in contributing towards, you know, preserving the culture and arts of Mithila for this film?
I don't know if I can answer that myself. I mean, I was trying. I mean, and I don't know how successful I was, but I was trying to be, as I was trying not to get things wrong. I mean, those because it's a cultural document, so you can't really fake it, So that way I was relying. I did my research by talking to a lot of my relatives of how this particular ceremony happens, or even how this particular ceremony happened in 1998 because things were different. So I got to know a lot of things myself of how people used to get this small thing to sit on during the feast. So I tried to incorporate that in the scene as well, and how they used to eat on banana leaves. So it was the whole attempt was to get everything right, in terms of historically as it used to happen in 1998, and even in terms of the language, because Mathili itself has various dialects. Mathili in Darbhanga would be different from Mathili in, say, Supal or Samastipur, things like that. So I was trying to get those things right as well. Thankfully, I had one of the actors is also a Mathili professor, so he was helping me with the dialogues as well. So yeah. I mean, I can't say how successful I've been, but
Yeah.
I tried. I've tried.
Yeah, I'm sure it does help. So let's move on to the questions. So I'll actually start with this one on the that came last. It says it's from Razam. It says your story is set in Bihar, but the theme is relatable to everyone. I'm from South India. The family dynamic was very familiar even growing up in the city. Okay, so it's just I think compliment.
Thank you.
Next question, Chitiz asks, what are schedules in director credits? For example, first schedule, second schedule.
Oh, so we shot the film in, there were 3 different schedules because there are 3 different parts.
Okay.
So, I mean, it went on to 4 schedules eventually, but we had planned to shoot because we had to age the house after, shooting for the first time, and age the walls and everything. So we shot first in June. But June we couldn't complete it entirely because there was a lot of rains which disturbed our shoot. So we completed that in October. And then after October, we took time to start aging the house and paint the walls and everything, and cut down some trees, and cut down the tulsi plant which is there in the center. And then we shot that in November then. And then after November, we had to age it further, for the last part when it's in complete, ruins. So that became our last and final 4th schedule in January 2019.
It must have been really painful for you to go through that process, because even when I was watching it, I could almost feel the pain of peeling off that rooftops and towards the end. Like, was it very emotional for you, the process?
In a way, yes. That last scene, I mean, you know, being a writer, or I had imagined it, I had written it on paper, but when it was actually happening in front of my eyes, I mean, it was something which is a very new feeling in a way, because I had not seen the house in that state ever, you know. So I was slightly agitated as well. I was shouting at some people, and some of those things were happening. Uh, yeah, but yeah, I mean, just looking at that space, I'd seen that space for like 21, 22 years, but in this way, the light coming in, it was so different, and everything falling apart. So yeah, that was slightly emotional, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So at the beginning, why did you? Just get this from Ketki. At the beginning, why did you choose the occasion of celebration of birth for the family get together in the ancestral home? Why not any other occasion?
It was, in a way, I wanted to bring this, the cyclic nature of, of life, because when the film ends, it's initially there was another ending actually to the film. So the film is, then it goes to say autumn, then it goes to winter, and then finally we were not going to end it on winter itself. We were going to go to spring. So that would have completed a complete cycle of sorts. So that final scene was planned with, it had to do with the grandfather, who we've only seen in pictures or we've heard about in the film, but that final scene was going to be, him doing something in the house itself. But unfortunately, I mean, the actor we had, he was not an actor again. He was a childhood tutor of mine, who used to teach me when I was a small kid. So I cast him as the grandfather. We took his pictures. But for a long time, I was not very sure of what that final scene is going to be. I just knew it's going to be spring and it's going to have the grandfather, and it's going to be set, much before the story started, in '98, because he's already passed away in the first part. So we kept postponing that shoot, and then eventually, when we finally decided that we are going to do it, and I sent someone to inform him, we found out that he's passed away. So that was very unfortunate, and then we decided to do away with that scene, uh, and then yeah, I mean, coming back to that question, so it was, and even in the last part, the character who's there, Guddu, he's talking about, the initiation ceremony coming up in April, so that sort of, that completes that thing. And
Yeah.
when I was, starting to write the script, there was also so there's a birth in the beginning, so there was also a death towards the end. But as I went on writing, I realized, I don't need to probably show it as such, but that is there throughout the film. In the second part, the eldest uncle has passed away, and by the end, the grandmother has also passed away.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to have those, the birth and the death and all those elements and the seasonal cycle. So yeah.
So another one is from Arshad. He asks, every frame is a brilliant composition, and of course, the tree, the symbol of roots, family, belonging, togetherness. Is your education in film or photography?
Neither. I mean, I went to study film studies. I mean, which is very different from filmmaking, because it's all theory and everything. But I dropped out after. I mean, before I completed 1 year. So I mean, I would say, I mean, neither. I mean, but the thing is, I've been doing both of these things from a long time. I started photography when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and it's been going on, and especially I've been photographing Darbhanga, my hometown, for a long time. At least like for the last 5-6 years, I've been photographing it through different seasons and everything. And filmmaking is also something I started doing on my own by making short films with zero budget, and where I'm doing everything on my own, from sound to camera to editing, everything. So I mean, I mean, both of these things are self-taught.
So I heard that after you dropped out, you stayed there and spent your time watching and learning. Is that true? Like, and why did you drop out, if I can ask?
So that, but during that time itself, that 1 year, because I was in King's College, and it's like right in the center of London. So I was living literally in front of the BFI, the British Film Institute. And BFI is like it's the cathedral of cinema. So I was there almost every day watching something, or just like buying some book or the other, or buying a DVD to watch a film at home. So yeah.
Okay. So Anaga asks, which is your favorite scene from the film?
I'll say one favorite scene and one favorite shot, maybe. I don't know. So
Yeah.
the one I really enjoyed shooting was there's this, it's the longest scene in the film. It's just one shot, and it's those two cousins. They're going through those old diaries and the albums, and they're talking about those old times. It's somewhere in the middle of the film. It's in the second part.
Yeah.
It's at night, and first he's having his dinner, then he's called, and he goes there.
That's
So
I remember pretty long. Yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed shooting it because it wasn't scripted again. One of them is a wonderful actor. He's not a non-actor. He's not a he's a theater actor.
Yeah.
Abhinav, who's playing Guddu. And then there's Satyam, who's the other person, and he's also done a little theater in Darbhanga. So when we were planning to do that scene, I gave them certain checkposts, sort of checkpoints, like let's start the scene here, then let's go here, then here, and then we'll end at this note. And what happened is I gave them our grandfather's actual diaries to improvise. So they were actually reading from those diaries. So everything that's coming out is very, in that moment, it's not scripted, it's not artificial, and Abhinav, being such a wonderful actor, what he did is, obviously we had spent a lot of time before that scene together, because we were shooting in June as well, and we had met before. So in a way, he brought a lot of things he had just heard from me, and he incorporated them into the scene. Like this thing where, because he knew that the camera we had in our family came from Nepal, the Yashica camera, So those things were very naturally, he just brought them out in that scene. And the thing where he says that in my time I used to be the one clicking pictures. So these are some very personal things that we had spoken about, and from my experience. So I remember in that scene I was just sitting and just smiling throughout, because I was really enjoying shooting that, and that's why I probably decided to keep the whole length of it in the film. That's why it's the longest. It's almost 7 minutes long. Apart from that, there's this scene. It's not even a scene. It's this empty shot, and then there's a bird, and the bird comes and sits here. Then it goes down on the bed, and then goes up, and then it enters the room. So this is something I knew, much before even writing the film, that I knew that in one of these rooms there lives a bird, and it comes whenever the people are not there. Because when it's all crowded, it wouldn't come.
Yeah.
So when I was writing, I really wished if I could incorporate this in some way. But knowing that we're doing it complete low budget, and we don't have we won't be able to do that, because we can't do VFX, and cheap VFX wouldn't look real as such, and we couldn't have like a bird trainer to make the bird do all that. So I had almost done away with it. I was not even, So it was the last day of the first schedule, and we had to shoot this empty corridor. It's just after the rain, and we had just set up the camera, and this bird comes, and we just press record. And it's just this beautiful thing where it's not just sitting there. Goes down on the bed and then goes up, and then it enters the room as well. So I was very happy because we got it for this moment, say we had got it when there were still people, it might not be as impactful as it is in the narrative right now.
Yeah.
You know, we got it just when, everyone in the family has left. Now the house is empty. And then you see this bird coming in and, doing that whole choreography and then entering the room.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, again, that was something else which I really loved about shooting.
How long did you shoot? Like, what was the total shoot days?
So I think 30-35 days in like 4 different schedules.
Okay. All right. So another question is, can you talk a little about the title? Why Gamak Ghar? I guess Gamak Ghar because village home, right? Is there any other reason for Gamak Ghar?
No, I mean, the working title was Gamak Ghar, and then it's the Gamak thing is sort of borrowed because a friend of mine who's also the production manager of our film, he had written a script which he eventually didn't make, but it was called Gamak Mandir.
Okay.
So that's where Gamak Ghar became Gamak Ghar, and I really like the sound of it. The G and G.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Alka asks, how did you achieve this level of realism? I don't feel I'm watching a film.
Again, I mean, relying on those non-actors and just letting them do their thing and not imposing anything, and also because I mean the style of the film is very fly on the wall. It's very objective in that way where things are just happening. So say if there's a scene of the feast happening, we let the feast happen as it happens. We're not interrupting it. We're just moving around almost like a documentary filmmaker and trying to get our shots. For the ceremony of the newborn kid, it felt like a actually simulated event, even though it wasn't. I mean, we brought in a 10-year-old kid, and there was this person who's not his mother. There's this person who's not his grandmother, but they're doing this ceremony. And there are these people who've come in who sing the folk song. They're not really from this village. So it's all a setup, But when it started happening, they just went with the flow. They didn't stop at all. They just kept doing it. And when, like when it ends, you see that they're offering those small amounts of money to the kid. They actually did it. I didn't ask them to, they did it. And they left, I mean, so we gave it to the kid's mother eventually. So we were just, like documentary filmmakers trying to, the most we could do is, maybe tell them, Acha, haan, maybe stop here. We'll try to capture this again and, go ahead like that.
Okay. Another question is Maithili your native language? Is there a specific reason you chose to shoot in Maithili? I think that's already been answered, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, from there. And
it is your story. You're from there. So, Panji compliments. I just wanted to say kudos to you for making such a beautiful film. The simplicity of the film is breathtaking. Brought back so many memories. But that's a compliment from Panji. And Roshni asked, what was the process of getting this particular house? Again, I think it's already been answered. Yeah, so I guess I just have one last question and then we'll wrap up. This is from Gamak Ghar. What is a home for you?
That is a question which I'm still grappling with, and it is something which might be there in my next film and after that, and I'll be finding my home probably till the end, because I've always moved around a lot. I moved out of Darbhanga when I was 9 years old, and I went to a boarding school. So I was in one boarding school for 6 years. Then I went to another boarding school. Then I was in Delhi for some time. Then I went to London. Then I came back. I was in Delhi. Then I came to Bombay. And there's always been this movement, So, and I don't know if Darbhanga is my home or say where I am right now is a home. So it is something which, this sense of belonging, or those are some questions which I'm myself dealing with right now. So maybe I might have an answer in my next film. Maybe after that. So I mean, I think you'll have to wait.
So you're all over now, and maybe perhaps like the bird, you'll fly over sometime and visit your house. Yeah. Thank you so much, Achal. It was really wonderful talking to you. It was a very beautiful film. Thank you for making that film, and we hope that we hope that you're already on to another great project, and we'll get to see that as well. And I hope to chat with you again. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. Enjoy the rest of the festival tomorrow and for till 17th of October. Thank you. Good night.